Lionel Mason in the house.
Lovely to be here, Cash.
Welcome. Welcome. I've given up being an e-commerce director and started a radio show. It
Well,
feels
who
like
knows? After this, you may have a new career beckoning for
I
you.
might do a better job at it. But welcome anyway. It's good to see you.
It's great to be here.
Really, really good to see you. So let's start with why we're here instead of doing our day jobs. I think.
Well, we're here particularly to talk about the Unity Employee Network. It's one of the 3 employee networks we have in the companies. We've got Unity representing people from diverse communities in terms of race and ethnicity. Mustn't forget we have other communities as well. We've got the able community for diversity, and the longest running one that we have is the Pride community, which obviously that's all about gender, sexual orientation. That's really their area of concentration. So we've built up this network of employee networks, and Unity's become a very important network for us to represent all the people from various races and backgrounds we have working in Next.
So is Unity just about race?
No, I think it's about, how do you define that? It's about race, it's about ethnicity, there's a degree of religious background in there as well. It's really all of those things put together in one place, and I think that's why the Unity group came up with the name Unity. It was their choice. They had a few meetings to try and come up with that, and they felt Unity was the thing to bring all of those things together in one place within the one group. So
That's a great name.
I'm really pleased with that name. It's sort of a real umbrella across all of those different types of minority communities that we have.
And how did you get involved in it then? What's your sort of background with it?
Okay, so obviously in terms of HR, our diversity and inclusion initiatives are really important to us, because it's fundamentally important to the company to be able to attract and support and make welcome everybody in the UK who's available to work with us, and beyond the UK as well, of course. To do that, I think it helps to have some sort of focus on what we're trying to achieve. And one way to really get that was to use the people we've already got working for us who represent all of those diverse communities, and get them to really champion the needs of those groups of people. So I say we've got the 3 so far, but Unity was really important to pull together that final strand that we needed. So from my perspective, it's an important part of my job. I'm here to get people into Next, and to get them feeling comfortable and wanting to stay here working at Next as well, to contribute to us. So it's a real fundamental for me. Initially, I did start as the business sponsor for the Unity Group, because it was important they have someone at senior level in the organisation. But very fortunately, someone else came along and ousted me from that position.
Stole it off you,
and that happens to be the person interviewing me now.
That's right.
And actually, I'm really interested to want to know why you wanted to oust me. I can understand that. But really, what drove you to want to become involved in the Unity group?
I was just picking a fight with you. No, I guess I think my background, look, I sort of had 2 objectives really, which is why I got involved in Unity. I was really passionate about it. One was our employees, particularly in head office, but I guess across Next, and whether we are representative. I personally didn't feel we were 100% representative, maybe in our stores more so than in our head office. And by representative, I mean off customers and off the local area that we happen to be based in. And secondly, from a sort of very, maybe selfish, you could call it, commercial and consumer impact with the job that I have. So how do we represent our customers internally in the way that we can then engage them better than we could before, and be more representative of them? Our customers walk all sorts of life, of course they do. Not just in the UK, to your earlier point, overseas as well. It's a huge part of our business now, and ever growing. And so you've got all these different races and religions and backgrounds and cultures all coming together onto our website and into our shop. So how do we represent that internally? So that was sort of my background, how I got involved in it.
And that's something that's coming through as really important from the Unity group, that they are able to represent not just the employee but the consumer as well. and there's been some really powerful examples of how they can influence our decision making around our offer, our general offer to people, and represent it from those minority groups who have totally different needs and tastes and requirements of some of the things that we offer out there. So it's really powerful from a commercial perspective as well as the employment perspective. So interesting that's the thing that
it was one
made you want
to
enter into this.
Yeah, definitely. So tell me about, where do you feel we're up to? I mean, in the last year, we've, Next as a business has made this commitment around equality, around diversity and inclusion, and we've sort of put a statement out there. Tell me about the statement and how that came about, and what does the statement consist of?
Okay, so I think it's always important to have a statement. So that we've got 40,000 people in the company, and if you're not careful, if you're not really clear about what it is you're trying to achieve, you could end up with 40,000 different interpretations of what we mean by diversity and inclusion. So it really consists of 6 core elements that help to get across the message of what we're trying to achieve. So the first one we're trying to do is to create an inclusive environment. We want to create the conditions by which people can see that they can join Next, see that there's a place for them to thrive within Next, and create the correct environment for people. Then
Your reading glasses. You have to remember this.
I can't remember all 6 in a row. I needed to get them in the right order. So we need to recognise diversity. We need to not just recognise that there are differences in diversity and people have different cultural backgrounds and different ways that they respond to any situation, but also recognise that what diversity is and what it means for different groups and what are the key drivers of diversity for people. So there's an educational piece in that as well, so we need to do that. We need to promote a team culture that's inclusive regardless of any diverse aspects of people's personalities, and all these things and these aren't ambitions, these are reinforcements of what we do, and we can always be better, but I don't want people to think that we've looked at these things and think we've got gaps here. In Next, we're very good and we're very strong. We have an open, diverse workforce. We're a meritocracy. It's making sure that we make the most of that and continue to progress it. So just to make the point, this isn't, we're not going from a zero base here. This is about continuing to improve in these areas. So what we need to do for people from minority communities as well is to make them feel supported. So we have to encourage them. They need to see that there's a place for them in Next. This is where the employee networks are really powerful, because they can see the representation for them through those networks. There's someone to connect with. If something's not quite right for them in the workplace, they can go and talk to someone who's part of that network and feel supported, get some advice, get some help. Gives them a natural place to go. So we need to encourage them as well. Then we need to ensure that all of that is coming to pass. So that's about people understanding they have a personal responsibility to maintain that environment, to maintain those objectives. So that's more about communications with our employee group. But then the final one, which is really important, which is to uphold. And this is one that's a real challenge for people. The reason it's in the statement is to give people the confidence to do this. And that's, upholding is about challenging. If you see something that's not right, if you see people working against what we're trying to achieve here, if you see people, and usually this isn't deliberate, this is something that, someone will do something and they just need to be reminded or pointed out to them to learn from it. But it's really important to call that out, and it's really important to take what can be a difficult step in order to correct something that shouldn't be taking place. So it's giving our employees the confidence to do that. So we put all that together, we're creating an environment, we're supporting people in the environment, and we're monitoring and maintaining the environment to ensure we have a a diverse workforce. That's what we're trying to do through that.
Brilliant. No, good. How did it come about? I mean, how did you come up with the 6? Is this you sat in a room on a Sunday night, or?
I didn't sit in a room. People far more able than me to do these things. It was an iterative process. Like most things in Next, we don't go and get a statement off the shelf from someone else. Say that looks good. Let's dust it off. Let's turn it into a Next statement. We looked at what we do here. We looked at what it was we wanted to provide to people, and we defined these 6 elements around that. It's really about being true and credible to the next situation and the next experience. Obviously, as I said, we do this most of the time. We're on a good path. We've got a great starting point, but with these things you can always be better. In terms of where this really started, it's just recognising the changing shape of business and the workforce that we have today. There's a massive talent pool in the UK. That talent pool sits in all of the communities around the UK. We've got to make sure we can tap into that. The companies that are going to do best are the companies that can extract that talent and get the most out of that talent, nurture it, develop it, make the most from it. And that's what we need to do. So we can't afford to close off any part of our business to any of the talent that's out there.
100%. But I guess, how do we stop this from just being a statement on a corporate wall or on a website? Because I think that is the big challenge, isn't it, for companies? The businesses I work for, you go into the head office and you always see a statement or a set of values or missions, and that includes the businesses that are doing it well and the businesses that aren't. So how do we stop that from just being some text on a website or writing on the wall?
I think that's a massive challenge for any large organisation. The larger you are, the harder that is to achieve. I think the big mistake to make, which I think others have made, is to do exactly the sort of thing that you've talked about. You come in and you see the big sign on the wall, the big slogan, and the challenge around that is the moment you do that, everyone has to live that, and they have to live that every second of every day, and that's impossible. That's not real life. This is an iterative growth process to get better and to improve all of the time, and just sticking out the slogan is not going to work. We've all got to work at this. We've all got to engage with this. One of the ways to communicate it is through the training, the DE&I training that we've undertaken, and we'll probably talk about that a bit later. But that's a really important part of it. We point people to the statement within that training so they can understand what we're trying to achieve and what their role is within that. But coming back to your point, I think a good example of how there are traps to fall into is if you go back to the Black Lives Matter movement, so go back 2 or 3 years, obviously on the back of a serious incident, that all grew, and there was a lot of companies at the time who put messages out, slogans out to say we support Black Lives Matter. We stand side by side. We didn't do that because it has to be totally credible and totally authentic. And of course we support that community. Of course we support the black community. But there was a real backlash to a lot of the people who put out those types of statements because they don't resonate with the experience of the people working in the organisation, because that can't always happen on a day-to-day, minute-by-minute basis for people. So sloganeering is not the way.
I agree with that.
Coming up with judgments on various situations and making rules about behaviour is not the way. Educating people, having a sensible statement of intent, gradually working towards that, having that in the background to inform all the decisions you make is the way forward. But it's a long, slow burn. These are things that you don't change overnight. It would be fantastic if you could flick a switch, but you can't. We've all got to work towards it.
Okay, so tell me about Next. I mean, how do we know how we are doing as a business and whether we do have a diverse workforce? Do we have data on our employees? Do we want to capture data on our employees? Is that a sort of sensitive area to discuss, or are you?
It's not sensitive because it's a real challenge for us, and we are doing a data update exercise right now. People have probably seen reference to that through the messages from Life at Next, and it's really important for us. The most important part of it is if we don't understand the makeup of our workforce, how can we deliver to the needs of that workforce? We really need to know who are the people who are working for us. And we can look around, we can make a visual assessment of who's here, but that's not the same as actually looking at the data.
Yeah.
And we're not just collecting this from a race, ethnicity, religion point of view. It's the whole gamut. Obviously we want sexual orientation, we want gender, we're looking at disability, all of those things, so that we've got representation or an understanding of the people who are working for us to its fullest extent. And it's a massive challenge for us. For two reasons. One, historically, the thing with Next is people work here a long time. We weren't really collecting this data 5, 10, 15, 20 years ago effectively, so we've got quite a few gaps in the data anyway. And asking people who've been here 25 years to go back and just let us know about these things doesn't always resonate with people, and I understand exactly why people don't really see that as important from their perspective. Well, I've been here 25 years. If you don't know about me now, what is there left to know? But it is really important to add to that data set. So historically, we weren't always tremendously good at collecting it. There is, again, there has been a sort of historical resistance to providing this data as well. And with the correct conditions that we work with in the UK, people don't have to disclose that data. You can choose to, just to say other, or I'd rather not say, and that's fair enough. And if people want to do that, totally respect that, and that's their decision.
Are you seeing any
to do that
sort of pushback to collecting the data, or are people quite happy to?
Well, over time, I think what we're seeing is a far greater propensity to actually reveal and commit to people's personal information. And I think because the world has changed, people understand more why we're doing it. And I say we're doing it because we want to understand the workforce and understand the needs of the workforce, the people who are here. So I think people understand that message, they get that message, and they're happy to contribute. If people don't, that's entirely up to them. But it's definitely progress that people are more open with that type of information as time's progressing. We're quite early in that campaign, and we did when we did the engagement survey the last time, we also tried to collect some of this data as part of that as well, and that was very positive also. That enabled us to look at it's given us the opportunity. We haven't done as much work on it yet as we could do. It's given us the opportunity to be able to look at employee engagement for different communities within Next, so that we can see, are we delivering the same to the disabled community, to the black community, as we are to another community working within the organisation, see if we've got the same levels of engagement.
I mean,
it's again important.
It's sort of typical with all these things. If you explain why, people know why we're after that data, and how we're trying to make Next more diverse, more aware, more inclusive, and how it will benefit the company as a whole, internally and externally.
And that's absolutely it. And I think we have moved away from a place where everybody, it's not just an Next, everyone was historically, with a bit of suspicion around why do people want to know these things about me. I think people get it now in a much more positive way.
And so from either the data you've seen so far, or from your instincts, or from, as you say, visually looking around, do you think we've got challenges? I mean, if you're to look at
yes, we do have challenges. I think something you mentioned earlier was we've chatted about before, is how I think when you go into a Next store in its local community, it's very much a strong reflection of that local community, and you can see the community represented within the store, and that that's a great thing. That's exactly as it should be. you look around head office and it's harder to see the correlation. However, looking at the data we particularly got from the engagement survey, we do have strong representation from, say, the South Asian community in and around Leicester. Arguably, we're actually over-represented in the head office environment, so that's a great thing. I'm really pleased that people from that community see us as a positive place to work. One area, let's say, where we don't see a lot of representation is from the black community. Just thinking about head office, though, there isn't a very large, or comparatively not a very large black community in and around the Leicester area. I feel that's changing, but it feels like there's still some movement to be made there. But looking at the data, we're not as adrift as maybe I thought we were. We are closer, but there's room to make some progress there.
Why do you think that is, though? Why do you think we're not attracting enough black people?
I think you've got to create a sort of an inclusive environment, and a big part of that inclusive environment is seeing people like you within that environment. So it's always a hard starting point. If you are underrepresented in any particular area, people will not see that representation, and therefore it's harder for them to see a place for them within that group. That's changing, but it's a slow change. It can't happen instantly, but maybe there's some of that, maybe there's other factors at play. It's a very complicated area to actually try and distill that down to a real cause. But I do understand you if you go into, particularly there's so many people here and you're looking around and you don't see people like you, that must have an impact on your decision making as to whether that's the place for you to go and work.
Yeah, good. Well, let's go into maybe a little bit more about that. So unconscious bias is something which is, everybody has unconscious bias. It's not a bad thing to have unconscious bias. It's a natural thing to have an unconscious bias. And I think it is interesting, we were talking before about my children, under the age of 10, somehow have no sort of identification with people around their colour or race or background or anything else. If I asked them, which boy were you playing with today, or what was happening at school, it's very interesting that they will never describe somebody by the colour of their skin or by the colour of their hair or by their religion or background or anything else. They'll try their best to describe that person to me in every other way, and it's not because they're trying to avoid it. They're too young for that. They just don't see it. They just don't see it. I think as you grow up, I felt, I guess, growing up in a, I didn't have a rich background in particular, and so growing up in a very average comprehensive school in the UK and then going on to college and etc. And you can sort of see how, as you grow up, people gravitate, I think, towards people like them. Right? I think it's just a natural thing that happens. And like them doesn't have to be race, of course. It's all sorts of things: culture, religion, background. How they're doing at school, all sorts of different things. That means you sort of gravitate towards people like you. And so the question is at Next, how do we make people aware of their unconscious bias that then creates? They don't mean to have that bias, it's just unconscious, isn't it? It's just something that everybody has. And how do you bring that awareness to, I guess, people at Next?
Really important observation you made there, and I say that my own children as well. They're slightly older than yours, but I do absolutely see that and which is a great thing. They see people as people now, and that's definitely a huge move from many years ago when I was at school. So as I say, that's a brilliant step forward as far as I'm concerned. But you're quite right to point out we all carry around preferences. And whatever label we put on it, basically we all have preferences, and those preferences are driven by the people we are and our experience, and that can create this thing called unconscious bias. The most important thing about that is recognizing it's there and understanding it's there, and then you've got a chance of responding to it in a positive way and making sure that doesn't cloud your decision making. So increasing that awareness is really something that we can do through the diversity and inclusion training that we've put in place. So we've put a training program in place. We've taken very much a top-down approach to it, and right at the very top of the company, Everyone has participated in this program, which is brilliant because we need that level of support for this, and that's helped to shape and develop the program that we delivered. And a core part of that is unconscious bias, understanding it, recognizing it, dealing with it, being able to make decisions with that awareness that that is something that that can inform your decisions, which is absolutely critical. I'm really pleased to say that in the grade 1 and 2 population now in head office, 8 out of 10 people have been through the program.
Right.
So that's really strong. I'm really pleased with that, and we will get to 100%. But 8 out of 10 is great, and the reason I'm particularly pleased with it is because it's something that we're not forcing people to do. It's not a compulsory attendance. People are doing it because they want to do it. They want to learn about this. They want to understand about themselves and how they respond to these things. So I think that's really positive, because 8 out of 10 with people wanting to do it, and the 2 out of 10 that haven't done it, I know that will be just about time constraints, because everyone's busy in the business. And where we've pushed it down to the levels below, our engagement at the moment is 50%, but that hasn't been running that long, so we will continue to build on that. So we've got the training there. We've got 2 levels, the sort of the higher level grade 1 and 2 training. We're pushing down to some 3s, but all the way down to a sales consultant in a store, where we've got a piece of computer-based training for them to follow, to teach them about these things as well, or heighten their awareness about these things.
And what do you sort of hope will be the outcome of that training? Is this about recruitment and recruitment alone, or is this sort of a commercial, consumer-facing impact to this that you're hoping for as well? What do you hope comes out of the training?
I think, as you said earlier, those 2 things are linked, aren't they? From my initial perspective coming into this, it's all about recruitment and progression, so retention of people, making sure that absolutely regardless of anything other than someone's pure talent, that's the thing that gets them up the ladder in next. And we are a meritocracy. We do have representation for diverse people at various levels of the company, so we do that, but again, we can always do better on that. So really important from attraction and retention point of view, but equally coming to the point you made, which is something that's come along almost for me as a byproduct of this, whereas for you it was one of the lead-ins, is the commercial side of it as well, because we need that representation of all different groups across the, not just the UK, as we talk about the UK, we are a worldwide, multinational organisation. We serve consumers all around the world, and you are best placed to do that if you've got representation of those people within your workforce. And so it's absolutely critical for us commercially to make sure we're open to all of those people.
How do you think, let's talk about that a little bit more then. So how do you think Next comes across as a brand, putting aside all the Next employees, to customers, potential new customers? And do you think we've got any challenges with our brand that comes across as, maybe Next isn't the right brand for me to purchase from, and therefore it's not the right brand for me to join as an employee? Do we have a challenge there?
I think we do have a challenge there. I've looked at it from the employment perspective. You probably looked at it more from the commercial perspective. Certainly from the employment perspective, we did a lot of work on our employer brand. And when we were building our employer brand, we looked at our internal group to understand what the culture of Next was, how we could define that, to make sure it was authentic. But also we looked externally at potential employees as well. People working in sort of organisations where we'd want to attract people from. And it was very interesting. There was a total disconnect between those 2 groups. The group within Next see Next as an exciting, innovative, energetic, forward-facing company that takes a problem on, deals with it, succeeds, grows onto the next thing. A really exciting place to be. The external saw us as steady, staid, I hesitate to say middle-aged. We discussed earlier when we asked to describe the next person at a party, and they describe them as the designated driver.
Yeah, don't think of anything worse.
Which is
Nothing worse than that.
something that no one wants to be. The person hanging around in the kitchen with a Diet Coke all night. Yeah. So, yeah.
It's usually me. But anyway, yeah.
So you are the designated driver. Yeah. So it was just so interesting. And I think a lot of that comes from still, and this is so out of date now, but Next, as a brand in the UK, is still so strongly defined by the bricks and mortar store we have on the high street, close to where someone lives, or the retail park where they go and do their shopping and they pick up their customer orders. That's the definition of Next, not this energetic place full of young, capable, talented people who are pushing the edges of what retail does, continuing to improve the company. You know, our massive tech division, which is cutting edge in terms of tech in a business of our type. There's a real problem for us there, because what people imagine Next is not what we actually are, and what we are is far more attractive. So you know, we've done a lot of work on externally facing social media. We do a lot of work on LinkedIn. We produce a lot of content now to show Next as it is. It's a challenge for us.
It's a challenge for all of us. I think it's an ongoing one. I mean, from a commercial and a marketing perspective, I feel we don't. I genuinely feel Next doesn't have a problem as such, or and we have made real headway, I think, over the last few years in coming across as being more diverse. If I think of the models that we use, if I think about the campaigns that we do, if I think about the even the religious events that we promote. We've got Eid coming up, and last year I remember being so proud of the fact that it was our best Eid ever online in Next, and we chose to promote it to everyone. We put it on the homepage that everybody could see, and I remember before we would sort of never have done that, not for any other reason other than perhaps not being confident enough. And I think it is that confidence, really. Interesting, that confidence for me comes from having people in the organisation, as you've said, who can represent that community and can help Next build that brand out. I remember every year I get involved in what the curtain designs are for Eid, and what the campaign looks like, and asking my wife, and things like that. So it comes from employees, I think, helping to build that brand out to consumers, and we've done a fantastic job. Still lots more to go at. That's Eid. We now we need to do all the different.
Are there more Eids out there?
There's lots.
I remember working through the transition with Eid from was previous to this job. I worked with the retail group, and Eid wasn't mentioned as a seasonal event 20 years ago. It wasn't on anybody's radar at all. The opportunity obviously existed. It still happened. It was still there within that community, but it's something we hadn't engaged with at all. And seeing that transition from, we had a bit of a spike in sales over these two. Why was that? And suddenly you could see the product, you could see how that was referenced against Eid. And now we've gone full blown, like you say, to it's the landing page on the website, because it's such a critical trading period for us, and it's using the communities we have within Next to say, hey guys, we do this, and everyone goes out and buys this when we do that. We need to be part of that.
And I think what we need to do as well is move away from just focusing on those specific events at a specific time of year that appeals to one group, and it needs to be sort of always on. And there are brands that have done this very well. It's a very fine balance between having campaigns that are daring versus ones that might be offensive, and that is a really careful balance that we've still, I think, yet to strike. But everybody, I think, people in the marketing side of the business do recognise that, do know that, and want to make sure we get that balance absolutely right. And it'll be a bit more pushing every year and every season and every quarter to sort of get that right. Lastly, let's just talk about mentorship for a little bit. So tell me about mentorship at Next, and how do we not just recruit but mentor those people we have within Next around unity and around diversity.
Okay, so mentorship is something that we hadn't strongly engaged with over time, but it was clear there was an opportunity to use mentorship in a really positive way to focus it on diversity. So we have as ever with Next, we haven't gone in, with both feet
Yeah.
full on. We've gone in cautiously. We're finding our way. So we offered 8 mentorships last year. We're engaged with 3 organisations. So the big one is 10,000 Black Interns, which is a huge movement in the UK to give internships to people, to black people. With Leonard Cheshire, which is mainly focused on disability and to give opportunities to people with disability, and another one called Upreach, which is about social mobility and giving opportunities to people from underrepresented communities of all sorts around the UK. So we had 8 mentorships running. We've offered and had accepted full-time roles to 4 of those. Not everybody, depends on where you are in your mentorship journey and the reason you're on it. So not everybody is available to take work. So really delighted that 4 people are now employed by Next as a result of that from these diverse backgrounds. In HR, we had someone, Ajibola is now a permanent member of the team, which is brilliant. She's working for us in HR. We're going to expand next year. We're not going crazy. We're going to go up from 8 to 12 and carry that steady growth. But it's really important to give people the opportunity to come and test out this type of workplace for them. And sometimes they'll come here and say, yeah, thanks for that, but it's not for me. But it gives us a real chance to say, you are definitely for us, and get those people in here working for us. So it's a really strong program, and it's really helping to fulfill gaps that we've got in employment, but to give opportunities to people from those communities as well. So I'm pleased we had a good start there, and I think there's a long way to go, and I think we can get a lot out of it.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Lionel. That was absolutely brilliant. And somebody who joined probably near 6 years now, 6-7 years, Next has transformed massively just over those 6-7 years. So I can only imagine that people have been here for 10-15 years have just seen such a change, especially more recently. But it's because of all the fantastic work that you and your teams and everybody around Unity and everybody in the business has done on this. So well done, and thank you so much for your help.
That's very kind of you to say, but it's the people who run groups like Unity who do all the hard work. They're doing the legwork, and it's tough because they're doing this and they have their day job to do as well, and it's really hard, as everybody knows, in Next to fit those things in. So I do really appreciate the efforts that they're putting in to representing their communities. It's highly valued.
Brilliant. Thank you.
Thanks for the chance to talk about it.
No problem. Thank you.
Okay.